Marc Hassenzahl is a professor at the Folkwang University in Germany. Marc is doing research in the positive, affective and motivational aspects of user experience and experience design. Do you have any advice to companies who want to move in that direction? Which steps could they take in the beginning?
Yeah, okay, I'm not a business guru, but I think it's very important to think of the experience before the product. I mean, that's the whole message. So you should consider that this business should consider themselves as experience providers, although they sell technology. But they're not manufacturing TVs. They provide TV watching experiences. They don't manufacture mobile phones. They deliver communication experiences or relatedness experiences. So it's and this is an important step I think you should take, because it means that you're more focusing on the actual consequences of using a product and how you can influence that, and you go away from this simplistic model of I have a technology, then make a nice little shell around it, and a designer can design it, and we have a nice interaction technique, and then people will like it. This transition is very important, and I think it's also very difficult.
So if you were to pay some advice to people working in industry as well as in academia, what should they focus on in the future?
I mean, if we take this experience design idea seriously, then we need some methods and some processes to make sure that we get experience into a product. And I think there's a lot of stuff already there. But the important thing for me is that people in industry and academia, that they try to forget a bit about their background. Because I think at the moment, what you normally see is that people bring a background, like a discipline, computer science or psychology or sociology or something to the table, and then they talk about methods, and the methods just reflect what their upbringing. And I think for experience design, we need to do it differently. We need to focus on what we actually want to achieve, clarify that, and then come up, collect methods and come up with a pool of methods from various disciplines. And we have to do that although we don't share that background. We need to find ways of, enabling people in industry and academia to use methods they didn't learn in that sense. Make it easier so to get the crucial aspects into the experience design. That's something that's very important for me, because normally you see that people just do what they always did. So I'm a psychologist, I'm doing experimental stuff, and others are ethnographers, they do ethnography. But we have to combine these forces somehow to come up with a very coherent and also convincing and useful set of methods and ideas to push that along. And I think we have to focus a little bit more on the consequences of product use. So normally now evaluation means you have a prototype and you try to make it to improve it, and you're focusing on the interaction, the functions and understandability and so on. But with the experience design, it becomes much more important to figure out before you release the product what actually happens if you deliver that experience in that certain context. To make sure that it really plays out the way you want it. And you can have all kind of adverse effects if you provide something so close to people's concerns, that we need to take a little bit more care in evaluating or figuring out at least somehow what these effects could be.
What are you going to focus on in the future?
Yeah, I think for me, experience design is, for me, it's just a start. The whole thing is just a start, and try to figure out what does it actually mean if you develop these principles for design. And there are some very interesting implications for me, at least. One, for example, is automation. I like to prepare my coffee with a coffee maker, this small Italian coffee maker. But we also have at the office, we have a full automated coffee maker, a very nice Jura machine. And I always found it very unsatisfying to operate and work with that, because automation is so much outcome oriented. So you have this big black box it deprives you from all the things that define the activity. Coffee making, just press a button and then you will have the coffee. But it burdens you with a lot of extra things. So it gives you commands, clean me, power, we have to fill this and that. And this is something, which I have to do, tasks, but which are not connected to the actual activity I'm doing, like making coffee. So I would like to come up with a way, like an experiential automation, where you have the feeling that you did it yourself somehow. It's all very transparent and visible, but it's still going. It's still done automatically. I know that sounds abstract, but I have an example, which I like very much. I hope you will understand it. This is actually a one-person tea making machine. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you have this thing. This sieve is up.
Yeah.
You put the tea leaves on it, the water in the glass, and then you put it in there. You tell the machine how hot the water should be and how long the leaves should be in the water. And then what happens is you put it in, it heats up the water, and then the sieve moves down and up again. So it releases the tea leaves and catches them on its way up. So if you do nothing at all, it will just prepare like an automaton the tea. Mm-hmm. Yeah? And it will be perfect because it has exactly the right temperature and it has the right time in the water. But everything which is nice is also visible. You see the boiling water. You see how the tea leaves release the color how it colors the water, and you can always interrupt it. Mm-hmm. So if you, although it's another minute to go, you want the tea now, you just stop and take it out.
You participate much more than just
exactly. Although it's a machine, it tries to preserve the experience of preparing tea. Mm-hmm. And I have a little project like this as well with making coffee. So where we try to get rid of all the stuff people don't like in experience and try to aesthetically improve a bit the good parts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this should be glass because you want to see how the tea goes into the water and stuff like that. But still have it like a machine that runs automatically if you don't want to care. So optimizing the results. Yeah. Having the experience and optimizing the results at the same time. And I like this much better than the black boxes where you have the perfect coffee, but you're completely detached from the actual activity. I think this is a view in automation that only can come from an experiential perspective. It's unique to it. You wouldn't come across that. You wouldn't ask that question if you wouldn't have an experience-oriented mindset. At least that's what I think. Mm-hmm. And another example, what I really like is, or what I think I want to do in the future, is something I call transformational products or transformational features in products, which is loosely in the field of persuasive technologies. Let me give you an example. I mean, I guess you have a little computer at home, and I guess you also do your backup only irregularly.
Quite regularly, right?
Okay, so we did.
That's not normal.
Yeah, we questioned some people, and they say they have personally relevant things on it. Yeah. They do this backup only, irregularly, and they forget it, and they don't want to do it. So this student, he designed a very nice tablet PC. Before the iPad, by the way.
Oh.
And this is the docking station, and this is the tablet, the Slate, and you put it in.
Looks very much like the iPad.
Yes, that's true. But it has an interesting feature because it tells you the story of backup. You should do a backup, and it's included in that. You see, this is the external hard disk, and to back up to the backup, and the more asynchronous your data on the machine is compared to the external hard disk, the more it has this visual clutter here. It's like a nose where you can throw out something. Yeah. Like the nose at a bucket or something like that. We can throw something
like
out.
That,
so it gets cluttered here, I'm too full and I want to be emptied.
Yeah.
And I'm heavy. And I want this needs to get out.
Yeah.
And the only thing you have to do the backup is press that down, and then the data flows into the hard disk. It's just an interaction technique, but it tries to tell the story. You should do it
intuitively.
I care about it. I'm a computer. I care about it.
Yeah.
And you should care as well. I'm sorry, I need to do it because I'm technology, but you have to do it. And then it tries to use signals and that which are relevant to us to tell that story. And we did tests with a prototype of that, and suddenly, people like to do backups because it's not, I wouldn't say natural.
Intuitively.
But what is intuition? It's just it's a story, you can understand the story.
Yeah.
This thing wants you to do something, and you do it, you comply, because it's the story is nicely told. And I think that's also power of experience design. I mean, we can, at the moment, we can think of creating experiences, but we can also use it to shape behavior and of people, but in a nice way.
Yeah.
So in a way where you get an insight and you understand what you're doing, and it's a dialogue between the object and you as a user, and it's not something loaded into the product and you don't know it. Like, you're not manipulated, but this thing is just telling you, maybe you should consider doing a backup, and you can somehow relate to it.
Yeah.
And I have
it's very different than demanding back up now.
Yeah, exactly. And for some people, I discussed that they don't see a difference. And I say it's a big difference if you have this warning sign, and compared to telling the story in that way. And I think that's also the power of experience design, that you're more aware of that. That's the differences in how you tell a story matter. It's not. It matters how long it is, what the actual objects are in that, and how you tell it, the style of telling it, the rhetoric of it. And this wouldn't happen if you think of it only as a technological feature. Then it becomes a message, and you have to respond to it. And you wouldn't see the difference. I hope that we can use experience design ideas to get even closer to humans, in the sense of changing them, but not as manipulating, but from their own wish, from their own motivation. That's why I rather like to call it transformational, because it kind of implies that I want to behave differently, but I need something to help me to make that happen. But it comes from my own. It's my own motivation. It's not something you want from me. It's something I want, actually. I mean, at a certain point, you just maybe made the statement. Don't use that much water in the when you shower, or close the refrigerator, or something like that. But this only works if I really want to change myself, and then we can use experience design as a mindset, I think, to even produce better products in this field of persuasive technologies.
Thank you so much for telling all your stories and all your guidelines about how we can apply these principles.
Thank you for being here and giving me the opportunity to do so.
If you want to know more about user experience and experience design, you should have a look at the chapter Marc has written at interactiondesign.org. And here you can also find more chapters, all written by thought leaders and inventors. And you can find more videos like this one as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, exactly. That's more I can't come up with. Cut!